Hey guys, Gino here. Today I'm taking a look at the Beretta M9A3. This is the latest in the M9 series, and I know these things have been out for a little while, but this is the first chance that I've had to take one out to the range. So my plan is to take it out there, put several hundred rounds through it just to see how it runs, maybe demonstrate a few defensive pistol drills, and just have some fun with it. So I'm going to start out today by shooting at my close range targets. The first white silhouette's about 5.5 yards. The second white silhouette is a little over 8, and I also set up a life-size T-zone silhouette at that same distance, a little over 8. The final one is just a little bit under 11 yards. And this Beretta M9A3 is brand new. These will be the first shots I've ever fired out of it. The Beretta M9A3 debuted in 2015. It's a hammer-fired, magazine-fed, semi-automatic 9mm that operates in either double or single action. And it comes with a 5-inch barrel that's threaded for use of a suppressor. The overall length is 8.7 inches, and it has a 6.3-inch sight radius. And it comes standard with tritium night sights. Both of them are slightly elevated to accommodate use of a suppressor, and they're also dovetailed into the slide so that if you want to replace them, you can. So the pistol weighs just over 2 pounds or 33.4 ounces, and that's unloaded with a magazine inserted. And one of the really nice features is this Picatinny Rail. So this Picatinny Rail will accommodate pretty much any lighter laser that you would choose to put on the pistol. Another really nice improvement is the Vertec frame. So it's a much slimmer grip area, and to me it feels more like a 1911. It feels really good. But if you prefer the feel of the old M9 grip, Beretta does include a removable wraparound grip that you can place on the pistol and give it that traditional M9 feel. So let's take a look at the controls. Right up front is the decocker. So Beretta offers this A3 in 2 different models. There's an F model, which is a decocker, and it doubles as a safety. They also offer this in the G model, which is a decocker only, and this is a G model. And the weapon is clear. It was checked prior to the video. But when you rack the slide or load a round into the chamber, at that point it will cock the hammer. So it's ready to fire in single action mode. If you need to lower the hammer or decock the pistol, all you do is simply depress the decock lever, and once you release it, it'll spring back up and place the weapon on fire. So at that point, the weapon's ready to fire double action. With the F-type, which all the M9s I had the entire time I was in the military were all F-type. When you decock or lower the hammer, at that point you had to manually flip the safety back up to fire if you wanted to fire in double action. And that's exactly what we did to carry the weapon. We would load a round, lower the hammer, and then flip it back to the fire position and then carry it that way. And that was known as carrying it holster safe. And it's perfectly safe to carry the weapon in that manner. The advantage is if you have to draw your pistol and fire it, you eliminate the step of having to place it on fire before you start firing. You can draw the weapon and immediately begin firing it with that double action first pull, and then of course it'll move into single action. And I am aware that there are complaints about the decocker being located on the slide. So for some people, when they rack the slide, they say that their fingers or hands accidentally, as they come away, they hit the decock lever and it lowers the hammer, and with the old F-types, it would place the weapon on safe. And at that point, they believe they've racked the slide and they're now in a single action mode, and they go to fire and they're actually on safe because their hands have hit that and lower the hammer and put the weapon on safe. All my years in the military shooting the M9, I never had that issue. It never happened to me one time, but it is a common complaint that people make, so I wanted to kind of point that out. Let's talk about the rest of the controls. So here on the left-hand side is the slide lock and slide release lever. Forward of that is the takedown lever. The magazine release is in the traditional position, kind of behind and below or at the bottom of the trigger guard, and it is reversible and oversized. And I did reverse it because I'm a left-handed pistol shooter, so it was actually pretty easy. It took me 2 or 3 minutes to reverse that, so that's one of the things I did. So let's talk about the magazines real quick. The magazines also received a couple of upgrades. They now hold 17 rounds as opposed to the old magazines, which held 15 rounds. They also have this new PVD coating on them that is supposed to make them sand resistant, and it looks pretty nice to me. So while shooting today, I did shoot the new magazines, and I brought out a box of the old magazines. I have some of the OEM Beretta 15 rounders, some of the Checkmates, quite a few different 15 round old M9 magazines, and all the magazines worked without issue today while I was shooting. Another one of the really nice improvements on this A3 model is the trigger pull. So Beretta did a really good job of improving both the double action and single action trigger pull. The double action is lighter and just much smoother than the previous M9 models that I'm used to, and I'll kind of try and attempt to demonstrate. But in double action, there's very little take up, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. At that point, you feel the resistance of the trigger, and from that point, you just continue pulling all the way through. And like I said, it's just light and much smoother than the older M9 models that I'm used to. They also improved the single action. So the single action has just a little bit more take up. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch or so, but at that point you hit a distinct wall. And that's going to help make shooting single action more predictable, because once you hit that wall, all you need to do is apply just a little bit more pressure and it has that nice crisp break. So I really feel with both the improved double action and single action, that's going to help to increase your accuracy as you fire this pistol. All right, so I shifted the camera out to my intermediate targets. The first round gong is around 12 yards. The first black silhouette's around 16 yards. The white silhouette's a little over 21 yards. And then the second black silhouette, as you're looking out there, is a little over 26 yards. Woohoo! So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fire 10 rounds at each of my long range targets. 10 at the 41, 10 at the 53, the 62, and the 77. Okay, so I'm going to shift out to that 53-yard target. Shifting out to the 63-yard target. Now I'm going to shift out to that 77-yard target. So I'm going to walk out to that 77-yard target and just kind of show you what an actual person looks like as opposed to that steel silhouette. So some people are probably asking why, other than just for fun, but why even shoot at those longer range targets? Is there any training benefit? And I say absolutely. To hit those longer range targets is harder. It forces you to think about and use the fundamentals to get hits. And after shooting at those farther targets and then moving back into the closer targets, and I know this is going to sound a little odd, but once you move back in, you're going to notice your accuracy and speed will increase because you're using the fundamentals more effectively without having to think about them as hard because the targets are closer and you don't have to focus really hard to hit them, if that makes any sense to you. So, and the weapon is clear. So to hit those farther targets, like I said, you need to concentrate on and use good marksmanship fundamentals. You need to have a well-balanced stance, a firm but comfortable grip on the weapon. Once you present the weapon, you're trying to get that correct sight picture, correct sight alignment. At that point, you're going to have a controlled trigger squeeze. Once you squeeze the trigger and the round fires, you want to have a good follow-through. And the follow-through is where you maintain your stance, grip, sight picture, sight alignment, and at this point, you manage the trigger reset and begin the trigger squeeze again as soon as possible for those follow-up shots. The follow-through is what will help you make follow-up shots rapidly, even at those farther targets. It's basically maintaining all the fundamentals so you're prepared to fire again. If you notice in most of my videos, I shoot fairly rapidly at the targets, no matter the range, and a good follow-through is what, allows me to do that. All right, guys, so I focused back in on the intermediate targets, and I did put the gong back up. Hopefully I can knock that thing down again. So I was talking to one of my buddies who carried the M9 for a lot of years in South and Central America. And one of his favorite techniques, he was telling me, was the double tap. And so the double tap is when you bring the weapon up, and as soon as you present it and you have that good sight picture, you fire 2 rounds rapidly using a single sight picture. Let's go ahead and try it a couple times. So the double tap differs from what's called controlled pairs. And controlled pairs is where you present the weapon, you fire the first round, and you wait till the weapon settles and you get a good sight picture again, and you fire the second round. So you can be a little more accurate with the controlled pairs, but it is just a little bit slower. So practicing the double tap or the controlled pairs, those will help you roll right into the next drill I want to talk about. And that's the Mozambique drill, or some call it a failure to stop drill. And this is where you're gonna raise your weapon and you're gonna fire 2 to the chest and then 1 to the head of the target. And this technique originated, as the story goes, when a mercenary who was hired to fight during the Mozambican War of Independence, which was in the late 60s, early 70s. Well, apparently this mercenary rounded a building and he was armed with just that Browning high power, and he ran straight into an enemy who was carrying AK-47. And the mercenary, whose name was Mike Rousseau, he fired 2 shots to the enemy's chest, but the enemy didn't go down. He kept coming. So at that point, Rousseau raised the Browning and fired a 3rd shot at the head area of the enemy. And apparently he didn't actually hit the bad guy in the head. He hit him in the throat. But supposedly it severed the bad guy's spinal column, dropped him, took out the threat immediately, so it still worked out okay. Fast forward a few years, and Mike Rousseau, relayed the story to the famous Jeff Cooper. And Jeff Cooper thought it would be a good technique to teach at his shooting school. At the time, he was running the American Pistol Institute, at least that was the name of it. It later became the Gunsight Academy. But Cooper named it the Mozambique Drill after the country where the shooting happened. And, as the story kind of rolls along, in 1980, 2 LAPD SWAT officers were attending the training at Gunsight, and they recognized the value of the drill, and they asked Cooper if they could teach the technique to other officers in the LAPD. And Cooper agreed. But the 2 officers figured it would be easier to get it approved by the various law enforcement chiefs in California if they changed the name to the failure drill instead of the Mozambique drill. And the good thing is it worked. They got it accepted. It became part of the LAPD training, and it actually wound up being taught in a lot of other law enforcement agencies across the country. So the technique has been around a long time. And, personally, during the various shooting schools and weapons training events that I went through over the years in the military, I've heard it called by both names. And all I can say is that it's a very effective technique for putting down a bad guy, no matter what you call it. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that. So the Mozambique drill, or the failure to stop drill, it's a lot of fun, and it's also really good training. If you're not real proficient with a handgun, you may want to start out with those controlled pairs. Take a well-aimed shot, let the weapon come back down, settle, pick up those sights, take a second shot. Once you get more proficient, then start trying to do the double tap. Once you're proficient with, 1 or both of those, then start doing the 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, the failure to stop drill, or the Mozambique drill. Also, I do this from right now I'm about 6 yards, but this is a good drill. CQB ranges, maybe 5 to 7 yards, 8 yards at the most. But like I said, it's a lot of fun, and it's also good training. Before I go back to the intermediate targets and close out this video, I just wanted to give my opinion of this newest version of the Beretta M9. But to do that, I have to talk about the old versions just a little bit. I believe the M9 has been unjustly slandered by a lot of folks who spent time in the military but spent almost no time actually carrying and using the M9. They may have shot the M9 once or twice their entire time in the military for familiarization, or there are probably a few who are made to shoot it once a year for qualification purposes. But there's not a lot of soldiers who continuously carry a sidearm and frequently train with it. Another thing I would be willing to bet is the M9s that were handed out for familiarization or annual qualification were probably close to worn out and not maintained properly. It wasn't until I was assigned to a unit where I was issued a permanent sidearm, that's when I began to actually respect and like the M9. I will say that the M9s over those years that were assigned to me were mostly brand new, and I was the only one that fired them. And it's amazing how much better the M9 is when it hasn't been handled and fired by thousands of soldiers before it finally gets into your hands. Also, for full disclosure, I did have the ability to replace any part due to wear at any time, and that definitely made a difference. So here I am. I am one of the few former military out there that really liked the M9 pistol. And in my opinion, this newest version, the M9A3, is the best version yet. I love it. You know, if Beretta would have done these upgrades and improvements and released this version 5 years or so before the military decided to look for a new handgun, I think Beretta would still be the official sidearm of the U.S. military. And that's all I've got to say about that.
All right, guys, this will be the last magazine. I was hoping to knock that thing down. All right, let me set this down. I will be right back. All right, guys. I had a lot of fun shooting this Beretta M9A3 today, and so my entire time in the military, the M9 was the main handgun for the U.S. Army, and bringing out this M9A3 was, to me, kind of like bringing out an old friend to the range. It was a lot of fun, and I got to shoot steel today. And you know, anytime I can come out here and shoot, especially when I get to shoot steel, is a really good day. I will see you guys next time.